All right. So just that's recording. Perfect. Cool. All right.
Do I have to be standing in a certain? Okay, I see.
I think this looks pretty.
It's got pretty good range.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi everybody. I'm Nate Shattuck. I'm the new outreach manager here at the Tech Academy. Thank you all for weathering the snow and coming in and checking everything out. This is Megan. She's with PDX Women in Technology, and she's gonna share her story with us today, and I'm super excited about it. And we'll let her get started since we're already running a little bit behind.
Awesome. Hi everybody. Are you enjoying this weather? No, yeah, me either. I know, it's pretty rough. Did anyone get stuck on the Max this morning that derailed?
I got stuck behind it.
Yeah, me too. I did too. Okay. So my name is Megan Bigelow, and I'm the president and co-founder of PDX Women in Tech. I'm also the manager of customer care at JAMA Software. I'm sure most of you have heard of JAMA, but I'm wondering if any of you have heard of PDX Women in Tech? Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple of people. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about what PDX Women in Tech has taught me about me, because I'm thinking that there might be some lessons that I've learned over the last 5 years that might be applicable to some of you. But before I get started, since some of you haven't heard about PDX Women in Tech, we are a nonprofit, so we're a 501c3 with the purpose of supporting women in tech and encouraging women to join tech. We have been around for 5 years, and that's part of the story I'm going to tell you, but we've had quite a long journey. But where we are today is we feel that we are a very inclusive and engaging environment for all people, right? So we're here to support folks in tech to make sure they stay in tech because we feel like tech is where it needs to be. These are great jobs, and that's what we're here for. So I also am really honored to be here because Tech Academy has been incredibly generous. PDX Women in Tech. Tech Academy hosted a code retreat for us in October, and they're doing another one next month. And it's specifically for women, and what it is a space for women to bring their code projects. It's not competitive, it's just bring your projects, work on your projects around other people who can help you and support you. So thanks Tech Academy for that. So first of all, why am I here? So this is a picture of my 2 kids sitting on Santa's lap, and it's actually a really big deal to me because this is the first year where my daughter wasn't screaming. She was actually really happy. But why am I showing you a picture of my children on Santa's lap? Well, they're the reason I'm here. Let me just first say that PDX Women in Tech is 5 years old, and so it was technically my first baby. When you're in, I had my daughter, Jet, and then I had my son, Francis. He's 1 year old. And it's important to me to be very active and engaged in the community and the world because I want to create a better, more engaged place for them. So I just always like to open these conversations up with these 2 little guys are the reason that I'm standing here today. Okay, so how did PDX Women in Tech get started? How many of you have heard of Grace Hopper?
Mm-hmm. Regular advertisements.
Yes. How many of you have heard of the woman Grace Hopper and know who she is and what she's done? Maybe? So she was in the Navy. She's also a computer scientist, and she was the first person to create a compiler for programming languages. So she's really important. She also was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, I think I can't remember what year it was, but she got it in the 2016 maybe? Yeah. So she's really important, and there's an organization by the name of Anita Borg who has a conference every year called Grace Hopper Women in Computing. And I went to that conference in 2011, and the reason I went is because it was Women in Computing, and I was really excited. It was the very first conference, or anything for that matter, that I had heard of that was really specifically geared towards women, so I attended. I met a lot of really cool people. It was right around the time when Sheryl Sandberg was coming out with Lean In, and it was like she was the keynote. It was very inspiring. Met a lot of cool people, walked away, met up with a friend for coffee and talked about all this great stuff, and then I realized how sad I was because all these folks were going to be going back to where they came from, and I just had a really cool network for a couple of days, and then it was gone. So my friend and I were just like sitting around very sad about this and trying to figure out what could we do. How could we create something that was ongoing, right? And as opposed to having to go to a conference to have this kind of support. And, while we were at coffee, we sat around and we were looking at other places like Women Who Code, Pie Ladies, Women Who Hack. There were a lot of groups, but both of us were like, but we're not coders. So So we immediately self-selected out of attending any of those events. We didn't even try to ask if it was okay if we attended. We just automatically assumed we couldn't attend. So that's obviously kind of sucks because we were missing out on opportunities to meet other people, but it inspired us to start something else. And so we decided to create our own group. This would have been a really informal group, more general in terms of not specific to a certain technology or a certain discipline, but more specifically to tech. We decided to call it PDX Women in Tech, and we wanted to post it on, we actually ended up posting on LinkedIn back in late 2011. And we were like, well, what if nobody shows up? We actually almost took it down many, many times because we were so freaked out we would be the only ones there. And we finally decided, what the hell? If we're the only 2 people at a bar, no big deal. We just had happy hour together, right? So we decided to put it out there, invite everyone we knew. I opened up Paint. If any of you have used Paint, and I created this logo. Yeah, we actually used that logo for 3 years. And we just decided to go for it. So we set up shop in January of 2012, and 15 people showed up. We had people ranging, literally, surprisingly, we had people from really entry level into tech all the way to someone who had started her own company and everything in between. And the feedback was tremendous. It was, oh my God, thanks for doing this, because we actually have been wanting something like this and never felt like we could attend some of these other groups. So there were a lot of other folks who were feeling the same way as we were. So that was 2012. 5 years later, there's 3 things actually that I wanted to share with you that I've learned along the way. And I was thinking, if you have any questions throughout, go ahead and ask me, because I'd like this to be as informal as possible. And this talk will be about 15 minutes, and then I'll stick around to the end. Okay, so the very first one is asking for feedback. So I have to tell you a little story. That's actually, if I had told you the story when it happened, I would be crying because it was really hard. So when I was first starting out as a manager, I was working for a company that had an office in Hillsborough, but it had the mothership, headquarters was based in the Bay Area. So all of my leadership was in the Bay Area. So I was basically alone, meaning I was responsible for this really big team, but I had really nobody around to support me. I was having my regular one-on-one with my boss, and he proceeds to tell me that his boss thought I was a sharp edge. I was like, oh, no one has ever called me a sharp edge. I don't even know what that means. And I was like, oh, well, can you give me a little bit more information? And he's like, nope, nothing. He just brought it up in a meeting. It's like, oh, okay, well, what should I do about it? I don't know, just feedback for you. So, of course, I went into a conference room and cried. And then I decided, all right, I got to talk to somebody about this because I can't really sit with this. I literally felt like I'd been punched in the gut. So I had a mentor, and it was actually a male mentor, and I told him the whole story. And what he said to me was this. He said, feedback is a gift. No matter what it is, it's a gift. You may not believe it, but it's a gift. And he just kept repeating that over and over and over again. I was like, oh my God, how could this possibly be a gift? I don't even understand, what does it even mean to be a sharp edge? But over time, I got over it. I actually never did learn what he meant by that. But what I did learn from that experience is that feedback is a gift. And you don't have to believe it. It doesn't even have to be true. But it is incredibly important to know how other people think about you. And I've taken that experience, of course, many things have happened since then in many different settings, but that experience really shaped how I feel about feedback. And so with PDX Women in Tech, we actively ask for feedback all the time. We do surveys after every event. I go up to people, if any of you ever come, I'm going to ask you, hey, what do you think? Could we do anything differently? I'm always asking, all the time. Believe me, I hear things that every month I read survey scores and I'm like, oh God, this is so hard to hear. But that's the only way we can grow, right? Some of it we act on, some of it we don't act on. But we always read it and acknowledge it and figure out if we are accepting it or not, right? And I think this is important because well, actually, there's one more part about this. So as you can imagine, when you're asking for feedback, there's a certain category of people that are going to be really forthcoming with feedback, or if you give out surveys, depending on what you're doing, surveys might be appropriate. The people who are typically the survey responders will apply, but there's a different category of people that don't, and those are usually what I found to be some of the more quiet, introverted people. So I seek those people out, and I say, okay, I need some feedback. Like, I get them in a setting that might be comfortable to them, and I get feedback from them too. So I try to make sure it's not just the loudest voices giving me feedback. And so feedback has shaped everything that we've done, and I think is the main reason why we're still here. And with this feedback, we've created the mentorship program. With this feedback, we started introducing events, a more wider range diversity of events. We made sure that our happy hours, which we consider our flagship events, have more structure and speakers and themes and a coloring table, so people who feel uncomfortable coming to events with large groups of people have somewhere to go, right? And you might be wondering, like, how does this apply to me? You're talking about events. I guess the point of telling you all of this is that you would be, like, amazed at what you can learn about yourself, about what your work, whatever it is you're doing, if you just ask. But you always have to be prepared for how hard it's going to be to hear some of it, and you want to hear the hard stuff. Make sense? All right, so I keep going the wrong way. So the second one is question everything. This one's important because as I was putting this together, I realized that I almost quit PDX Women in Tech in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, and then by then I stopped thinking I was going to quit. And if I quit, that means that the whole thing stopped, because I was, for many years, the only person keeping it together. And, I thought, oh, that was kind of a big waste of time. Like, I'm just, just keep saying I'm quitting and I'm not quitting. But what I realized is that process actually allowed me to question what I was doing and making sure it was still relevant and valuable. And I actually now feel like it's very important to question a lot of the big things that you do in your life, right? So, for example, in my job today, I'm the manager of a team. I've been working at JAMA for almost 3 years. I question often, is this the job that I want? Is this the company I want to work for? Is this what I want to do with my life, right? Because if I don't do that, I could really end up down a really long path of, like, resentment and dissatisfaction. Maybe I'll tell you, you guys seem like a kind of group that could hear a personal story, because I've already told you one. I'll tell you an even more personal story. So my biggest example of not questioning things is back 2004. I actually got married, and I shouldn't have. And I'll tell you why. I'm married again, but like I had a relationship that I was in for 5 years, and we decided, yeah, let's get married. Seems like the right thing to do. Okay, let's plan the wedding and do all those things. And all along, deep down inside, I was like, no, this isn't right, and I just kept doing it, and I was like, but I already got the invitations together, okay, I already got this all lined up, and then we ended up getting married, and 5 months later, we got divorced. So now, my practice and everything I do is to surface all of that stuff and examine it and find out, like, is this a real concern? Do I really want to be here? Because you can find yourself in almost every situation down what you feel like might be that boulder rolling down the hill and getting bigger and bigger, right? Until you end up where I was, where you feel like, I'm going to disappoint my entire world by doing this. Ended up working out for the best, but it was the hardest thing I ever had to do. The best thing I ever had to do. But it's taught me now to catch things sooner. And of course, by questioning everything as it relates to PDX Women in Tech, I've been able to surface people who were willing to help me, which ended up resulting in us becoming a 501c3. Okay, so there are leadership opportunities in everything. Right around the time where I was starting PDX Women in Tech, I actually was also desperately wanting to become a people manager. That might seem crazy to some folks. Like, why would you want to do that? I don't know, but I did. And I was going around the company I worked, and I was like, how do I get to be a people manager? Give me an opportunity. I want to do this. I can do this. And it wasn't until one of my colleagues went on maternity leave and an opportunity presented itself. She was a people manager, so I got to cover for her for 3 months. And so up until that point, I was thinking, oh, this is how it works. Like, I get leadership by people making me responsible for other people and that kind of thing. And what I have learned since then, and I mean, I will say that was very important, and it gave me experience to get to where I am today. But what I have learned since then is that there isn't a specific path that you have to follow, and there's not a specific job that you have to do to be a leader, to get leadership skills. And there's one other story I want to tell you about this though. So stop there. So you have all that context, right? Now there's a second piece of context. In March, I guess, fast forward to March of 2016. We're in 2017?
Mm-hmm.
2016. And I was the first time that I was ever really speaking anywhere. I was invited to be on a panel, and it was a panel of other women in tech. And I was like really excited. I was like, oh my God, somebody wants to hear what I have to say. And there was a woman sitting next to me who was very angry. She thought all women in tech groups were grandstanding, were just puppets. She was mad. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? And she dominated the panel, and the person sort of facilitating didn't really know how to facilitate, so I actually didn't get to respond to her. But I got to think about what it was that she was saying. I was like, wow, that is really sad that she feels that way. So what can I do about it? I've got this platform. We've got PDX Women in Tech. What are we going to do? Okay, so now you have those 2 data points. You've got leadership opportunities and everything. Feeling like I want to take what we have built so far and turn it into something that's sort of an environment of growth for women. And what I arrived at is, you know what? We actually are creating leadership opportunities by virtue of having PDX Women in Tech. So think about going to an event with a lot of people. Think about meeting people for the first time. That's kind of hard, right? You've got to figure out what to say. You've got to get enough courage to introduce yourself. You have to figure out what you're going to say. Someone might say something really crazy, and you've got to figure out how to respond to that. That is building skill. That skill is actually very applicable when you go back to work and you're leading meetings at work, or you're doing certain projects at work. And all of those tiny incremental things build confidence. And once you've started to build more confidence, you become more courageous, and more courage enables you to do more things. So I feel like not only does PDX Women in Tech offer programming or events that are important for women, or our supporters to grow and learn, but it's creating these, what I'd like to call, micro opportunities that build confidence. For example, we have 15 to 20 different volunteers that are doing a variety of things. One woman, straight out of school, we asked her, because we had like an immediate opening, to just be our newsletter editor. She's taking that skill, building it out, and using it to turn it into a career for herself someplace else, right? So the point of this is to recognize that just because something isn't following a certain path doesn't mean that it's not contributing to your growth as a person. And I'm also not suggesting that you have to go out and commit a bunch of time to volunteering. It's just look for these tiny little opportunities to be you, and they're kind of like face your fear, I guess you could say. And even if it's just reaching your hand out, shaking your hand with someone you've never met, that is going to build your confidence for future things. Make sense? All right. So those were the 3 things, and then this is my last slide. I don't know who said this. I could not figure out who said it, but I live by this. It doesn't take more experience, it takes more courage. And I guess that I have one tiny story about this, and it relates to applying for jobs. So back, I think it was 2007, I was ready for a new job, and I saw this job posting, and it said 15 years of experience. And I just boldly applied, even though I had 5 years of experience. And I had the job. I got the job. So the point of this is you may think that you need more experience to accomplish something, but most of the time, it just is going to take you being bold and courageous. That's all I have. Yeah.
This might come off as kind of an ignorant thing, so I apologize in advance. But I was reading something the other day, and it maybe was here in school, or it was maybe from a YouTube video where they said it, but it was a stat where it was something along the lines of women in technology are twice as likely to leave the industry as men in technology. And I was just kind of wondering as we were talking, I know we're in a pretty progressive state, really welcoming. I don't know if it's a nationwide thing or if it's a local thing, but have you seen that in Oregon, and what's changing? How are things changing to be more accepting? Because it seemed kind of alarming when I heard. I didn't really research more into it, but I heard it, I was like, well, that's kind of weird.
Yeah. So it's funny that you bring that up. I want to say that, did you know that there was an article that had come out earlier, gosh, it must have been mid last year, that actually said that Portland was dead last in terms of women in technology. So we actually are not doing very well here in Portland. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that is, and I'm happy to tell you what I think. But to answer your question, I do believe that women tend to self-select out at a certain point in their life. And that's one reason why we exist, because we want to be that space for people to go and get the support. And the reason I think people self-select out is anytime you are in an environment and you're surrounded by people, and even if the people are great and they supportive of you, if they haven't experienced the same things that you've experienced, namely like childbirth, that's a big one, right? Or little minor things like that's really hard. And I've experienced both, where it's like I was the first person at JAMA to go on maternity leave. And that might surprise you, but it's actually, or not, right? But it's like when you look around and you don't see people that look like you, or you look around and you know that there aren't people who have gone through some of the same things you've gone through, it makes it harder to stay. Now, there are even some more extreme scenarios where, now I personally haven't experienced this egregiously. I'm positive I have at a more like micro level, but I think particularly around being a mother at work, it gets very difficult because, I don't want to I'm overgeneralizing in everything I'm saying here, right? But it's sort of like, as mothers, we might feel like we have certain responsibilities at home that maybe our colleagues that are men don't have necessarily, even if they're fathers. And so that's just one example. Or being pregnant at work is really hard. I'm sure there's a lot of other examples that I'm not even bringing up. That just comes to mind. But that's why. And what we find, I think, I'm going to go real dark here for a second, but I do think that many women are facing harassment or other things, right, that they might not feel comfortable talking about. I know that is happening in a lot of places, even in Portland. So it just creates a cycle of feeling like you're stuck, or like the only way that I can escape this, because I have no one I can talk to about it, is to leave. Does that answer your
Are
question?
things improving in Portland, though? They're dead last. Was that recent?
Yeah, that was last
Statistic?
year. Yeah. No, that was just in terms of the diversity numbers, like the ratio of men to women. And then certainly Portland is, I don't know where we rank, but probably not so great as it, if you were to pull out any other metrics like, people of color or, other, ethnic backgrounds. And that's part of it is because of where we live, right? But yeah, I think one of the reasons why Portland is tough is because we have, and I've actually currently trying to get in front of some of our city commissioners to make sure that they understand, the city has done a really good job of placing a lot of emphasis on startup culture. But the startup culture is a very elitist thing, right? It's going to hire people that know other people, and they all kind of look like each other. And they actually have to bust out of that in order to increase the diversity. And I think it's great that we have a strong startup culture here, but I think that there's some other things that are barriers to people getting into it. So, and I don't know that I have the answers in terms of how do we solve it, but I think the first thing in solving it is having an awareness that it's happening.
Oh, definitely.
And it's like, okay, well, as all of you, finish your school and go out into the world at these different startups, having that knowledge of like, oh, well, if all of us are hanging around at the keg at 7 o'clock, let's look around and see PM. Let's look around and see. I've worked at places where it started at 7 a.m. Let's look around and see who's standing here and who's not standing here, and let's figure out what we can do to perhaps have events where it's better for all of us.
It's like a big issue I hear is that a lot of times the women who are mothers and ones who have to leave to really childcare, which is where I was at in my last job, and a lot of resentment can build up, like, oh, I have to pick up the work that they are not doing, or a lot of shop talk that's done after, or at happy hours. And so you get left out of projects or get left out of ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. That happens all the time. I mean, it's happened to me very, very recently, so it's for real.
What do you think, like if you're, say you're a woman and you're totally like ignorant to women not being well represented in technology, what do you think like the biggest barriers as far as like that seeming like a career option is?
Okay, sorry.
Like I feel like technology is like heavily encouraged like amongst like men.
Yeah.
Not so much women. Like, is it just kind of a cultural thing, or is it like women don't like think when they go looking for a career like, oh, technology's well.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Right.
How many of you heard the news report? This was a couple of years ago on NPR about like why women, or the theory around women sort of leaving computer science. Yeah, so there was a time, I'm sort of paraphrasing all of this, I don't remember the exact dates, but I think it was in the 80s or something. It was really common for many women to be in computer science. But what happened is personal computer came out. It was marketed towards boys. Boys ended up getting it because, it was like, oh, this is a cool thing that I can have as a toy, whatever, they get it for Christmas. And then they get more comfortable with computers. And then in computer science classes, it was sort of expected that you had that base level of knowledge. And so women tended to not get those computers for toys or whatever it is they were using them for, and felt uncomfortable because they were coming in feeling already behind. Yeah, so I think that's the main reason. And I think that there's a couple, a lot, it's very complex, right? But there's a lot of other things at play too, just in terms of like nerdy. Is it cool to be nerdy? Am I going to fit in with my girlfriends if I'm nerdy? Or sort of like figuring out how to appeal to all kinds of folks. Like, I don't know how many of you are parents, but like what I get really excited about is when I see things like at Target where they have unisex aisles, right? Like they don't have a boys aisle and a girls aisle. They just have toys. So it's not like you're forced down one aisle, like, go look at all the Barbies. It's like, go look at all the toys and pick what you want to play with, right? Legos, there have been different categories of Legos, so they're more appealing to different, children. So it's there's a lot of stuff that's happening. It's just, there's still a lot of work to do. Yeah.
So in regards to just kind of following up on that, in regards to creating a culture that encourages, I have two goddaughters, and their father is a science, so he's definitely on the way in that process. But there's a lot of cultural, oh, you go to this, a lot of gender definitions.
Yep.
So what are some things that we tech is working on, and what are some things that we as a culture can do? Obviously, to me, it's obvious, don't try and steer them against doing something they enjoy it.
Yeah.
But,
So we are mostly focused on women as opposed to girls. The whole thing with girls is very important, and there's many organizations that are focusing on that. I think we volunteer where we can. So I don't have anything specific that we're doing other than raising awareness around the adults, and hopefully that translates into their personal lives. But I guess, like, what can we do I don't know, I'll just share a few anecdotes like that. I don't know if they're going to result in anything, but one thing, for example, I have a daughter and a son. Now my son's only 1 years old, so I'm not sure how that's all going to shape up yet. But I do know, like, my daughter is already very much, without any influence, as far as I know, from me, very much into princesses and ponies. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to fight it. Like, she wants to play with ponies and princesses. Let's make sure she gets to do that. But what I try to do as a parent is make sure that these things that she's doing aren't like, that I'm like sort of rate limiting or helping kind of, I don't know, I'm not trying to censor anything, but I'll give you an example. She got this pony for Christmas that said, I couldn't believe it, but they still made something like this. That pushes a button and it talks about how beautiful her hair is and how beautiful her wings are and are your wings as beautiful as mine? Like, it was all about how she looks. This is a toy, brand new toy. We took the batteries out. She can play with the pony, but I just don't want her to hear those messages, right? So I don't have good answers, but I do think it's just, if you are around young children, both boys and girls, I think, just making sure that they both understand, like, whatever you want to play with is great, and encouraging them and to try different things. I think that's the most important thing, is making sure that they feel like they can try different things and they're supported in trying those different things. Because I'm not a scientist or whatever. I don't have, who knows if it's nature versus nurture, but I do know that I think there is obviously a big part of it is what they're exposed to and what they see the adults in their life doing and supporting. Does that answer? Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like there's different competencies too. I think you spoke to this, but women bring something different and unique, right? Just like any team, you want a variety of people.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if there's any ways to kind of make that piece more visible and more known.
Yeah, actually, I'm so glad. So I had the opportunity a couple months ago to be on Afternoon Live. Have you guys ever heard of that? It's just like this, it's on Channel 2, it's just like a variety TV show. And they asked me to come and talk, and I decided to talk about the 5 things you can do to empower women. I had to do it in kind of a fun marketing kind of way. But one of the things that I brought up was this idea of amplification. Have you guys heard of it? It's actually something that the Obama administration, or the women in the Obama administration, have done and had been doing, and it apparently worked out really well. So the way that it works is, you heard of it?
I've heard of it, yeah. There's other.
Yeah, it's just basically when you're in meetings and you hear, really anyone, but this particularly can happen to women where they may not speak up as much or whatever. It's when you hear someone say a really good idea and you're in the room, you repeat the idea and attribute it to them so that their voice didn't get lost. So it does a couple things. It not only gives credit where credit is due, but it also creates a culture of sort of acceptance of lots of ideas. So you could really use that for anyone who you see in meetings that's not really, that seems like they're being marginalized. Yeah.
The cool part about that story was they were doing it, kind of under the table and just doing it, and the president noticed it and then started realizing what they were doing and started calling on the other cabinet members.
Yeah, exactly.
Without being, because guys like to go, yeah, and women are much more collaborative altogether, so they were being around that. And so that process they were using was a way to reinforce their voice, so they were collaborating together to make sure the voice is elevated.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
And he made that around his part, too.
Yeah. You had a question here.
Yeah, I am here because of you guys. I'm not in tech savvy, and I'm really not technical. I'm not savvy. It confuses me a lot. It frustrates me a lot, but I'm also aware that it's extremely important in this day and age, and I don't want to live my life being oh, I'm technical this. Someone else do it for me. So I'm just kind of wondering, whether it's just for, using, or as far as if I wanted to try and push myself into a career in that way, what would be my next step as someone that's just I'm not very good at this.
Got it. Yeah. So do you mind if I ask you a couple questions about yourself, in front of these folks?
Sure.
Tell me just a couple job experiences that you've had. Like, where have you worked?
I've been a waitress and I'm an aerial instructor.
Okay, so in those jobs you have customer service, you work with people,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so I'm so glad you asked this question because I think there's that certainly one of the main points of PDX Women in Tech is to celebrate women and people in all disciplines in the tech industry. So it's not specifically, it doesn't have to specifically be a technical role. So with your background, what you could do if you were interested is start looking for roles at tech companies that are in customer support. Or, you know, if you had said that you have some background in design or something, there's marketing, right? There's all kinds of things. But the one that I being a leader of a customer support organization, I always like to hire people based on, you know, how capable are you as just like aptitude and critical thinking and customer service. So I'm not looking for folks that necessarily, I don't need people with with a CS degree, although that's cool too. Like I've got all kinds of roles on the team, but like I am going to really look for people who are comfortable working with people. So, and I think that is the kind of role that has, I don't want to say I think it actually has probably one of the lower barriers to entry because you're not going to most of the time be up against like a screening that's pulling your resume out because you don't have a CS degree on it. And the thing that's cool about just tech, working in the tech industry is, you know, sure, like engineers might have a pay up here, and you know, but the thing is, it's like everybody, because you're in tech, they're all really well-paying jobs, assuming the company's doing well, right? And you can keep, but it's not like customer support at Comcast, right? Right? We have like all across the board. I'd love to talk to you about it more, and like we can help you. You know, it can connect you with people that you can kind of brainstorm and talk about this, but it's totally possible and very doable.
Yeah, I'm also noticing a lot of these questions are coming back to me in my head. It's a lot of it's coming back to my women's studies that I've done,
Yeah.
and like linked very closely to that. So that's really interesting to me too, and how that's like a lot of it has a lot to do with the patriarchy and how women are marginalized and not taken very seriously or not respected to the same degree as men. So like that part of it is also really like exciting to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, cool.
Great.
I have a question. You talked about events near the beginning of your speech.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, like for instance, the first event you mentioned was a women's only event that was hosted here at the Tech Academy in October.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know if the other events that you host have a similar focus, and if men would be welcome to attend.
Yeah, men are welcome to all of them, even the code retreat that I was talking to. I think we actually had a couple of men there. I think the reason that one is we call that a women's focused code retreat, and I'm not the expert because the woman that actually organizes it, apparently in the code, there's like a ton of code retreats that go on all the time, and some of them are like, I don't know, there's some weird dynamic happening between code retreats, so apparently like to make it very clear that it was safe for women, we had to come out and say it was for women only. But men are welcome all events, all the time. As long as anyone is welcome as long as you support our purpose.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up question?
Yeah.
What would you say the culture is like for men who are attending those events versus like a non-gendered event? I don't know how else to put that, but event that doesn't have like some kind of specialization in gender.
Sure.
Like, are they ostracized in some way, or put off on their own little table to kind of deal with themselves?
No, not at all. I guess you're probably better to ask someone who is a male that has attended. But from my perspective, everybody is well integrated. In fact, we have a gentleman that is part of our event experience team, and his role there's a couple of other people in that role, and they're responsible for making sure that people feel welcome. So he goes around and he talks to people, particularly like the wallflowers, make sure they're engaged. So no, we don't we're not separating people, or I have never seen like the guys group in the corner. Like everybody's very well integrated.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I want to be clear, like, I just remember, it's not called women only, it's called women focused, the code retreat. So forgive me for calling it women only. We don't do anything that's, like, exclusive. And you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question concerning feedback. So as
Feedback?
Yeah.
Yes.
So as a manager and as a leader, I assume that you have a lot of feedback from people.
Oh, yeah.
How do you know that they are not tailored or sugar-coated to say what they assume you want to do?
Wow. I would say that that is going to take time in terms of once you've built a relationship with someone, you start to get to know how they talk, what they normally say. So, I mean, first of all, without any relationship building, let's just say this happens straight out of the gate and you don't have time to really get to know this person, I think you're just going to have to use your best judgment. And honestly, like, as cheesy as that sounds, your judgment is going to be pretty good, right? As you get more experience, you just learn to rely on it more. But you know, after I mean, as a leader, like as a manager, I invest a lot of time in getting to know people so that when stuff like that comes up, I start to understand if it's in character or out of character. But it just takes a little bit of time. So I don't have any like tips as to how to determine it, but you can usually sense early on.
I got a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Not wrong, but in general, you mentioned earlier on that, you know, women go home and take care of their families, and so they're not missing opportunities at happy hour and stuff like that.
Sure.
In an ideal world, what would you envision being the team building collaboration that supports women's needs and fathers' needs, as well as that dynamic, and still allowing the team and the company to not miss out on projects? What would be kind of an envisioned solution?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a diversified approach to hanging out, right? So it's like hang out later at night at the K could be something you do occasionally, but going out for lunch during the business day is another one. Maybe going and getting smoothies as opposed to getting beers, you know, stuff like that. It's sort of like just making sure that you're changing it up because different people will come to different things. But it's also like you don't want the smoothie outing to just be like, you know what I'm saying? Like you also have to be aware that, like, I'm, you know, trying to encourage people to come to the lunch meeting. The same people that might go to the happy hour to come to the lunch meeting. I mean, so it's not perfect, but I guess, yeah. And it's what I find, even in my job right now, there's a group of people that knows each other and they go out to lunch together every single day, right? But it takes somebody like me who feels more comfortable pointing it out, right? And that's why I am so impassioned about getting more women, more diversity in places, so as they move up the ranks, they feel more comfortable, because the more of us that are at the, I'm not at the top, but the more of us that are at the middle or the top, the more we can speak out, right? Because I can speak out when someone else doesn't feel comfortable doing that.
Once again, we should have like a seminar or a planning session on a workplace in the tech industry that encourage that. Because you would say it, and then how do we actually, it seems like what would be the ideal scenario? What would be a way that's inclusive? And I think my first fear of doing a smoothie would be that you have that, the guys are just going to show up.
Sure. There
would be no, it almost would have to be some sort of company sponsored, like Intel does, like, collaboration where people really get to that, and the team does that, and they explain on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, it's during the work hours, getting that far going, so what you would do on happy hour would bring this much forward.
Yep.
Something like that, special, or even have, like, a 2-hour happy hour that's in the middle of the day. Everybody should probably come to the team.
Yeah.
So they realize, hey, let's try and just move this together and we have stuff set.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is just to sort of understand the culture and the people involved. I mean, certainly not all cultures are good, so that's where it's going to take some leaders that are in a position to do something about it to help shape it, right? So I realize that there are situations that some people would actually be stuck in if they're afraid to speak out. Any other questions? No? Well, thanks for having me here. I hope this was useful. It was just really fun to talk to all of you. And if any of you want to follow up with me, feel free. I'm Megan at PDXWIT.org. So feel free to reach out. Thanks.
All right,
Have a good
thank you so
weekend.
much.
Hey,